Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and what a delight to have back with us our good friend David Brody. He's the chief political correspondent for CBN News. He's the host of the Brody File that you see right here on the DOVE TV network. He outruns locomotives, he leaps tall buildings, and I have seen him eat big hamburgers.
We just keep that private, Perry. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi, David. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, Perry. Great to see you, as always.
Good to see you. Well, what'd you think of last night?
Oh, where do I begin? Does anybody have Excedrin? I tell you, I carry Excedrin. This is true. I think I'm all out this election season for sure. A huge night for Donald Trump. Yeah, okay, so Kasich wins Ohio. Good for him. It was a home game for Kasich. He had to win it. He's still in the game technically, though he can't get to the 1237 anyhow in terms of delegates, so it's going to be tough for him either way. But look, this was a big night for Donald Trump, and that Trump train, I think this is where we cue the locomotive, choo-choo. It's leaving the station, Perry, whether evangelicals like it or not. Some do, a lot don't. But the reality is it's happening. So big night for Trump, big night for Hillary Clinton, and it looks like we're heading towards a Trump-Clinton matchup. I don't think there's any question about it. Does Ted Cruz have a shot? Yeah, he has a shot, but he's got to win 80% of the rest of the delegates the rest of the way, and that is tough math, Perry.
All right, so the rest of our questions are a little bit hypothetical, but I think it gives us some things to talk about. Kasich taking Ohio and whatever Cruz ends up with, doesn't that make both of them brokers going into a convention because they will hold their delegates until the convention?
Well, it does. And so obviously this is all about Donald Trump, actually getting the 1237 number. And the question is, can he get it? Because, yes, you're right. Kasich and Cruz will want to be players. And, that's what they're holding out hope for. I mean, they're hoping that Donald Trump doesn't get to 1237. It goes to a first ballot. Obviously, at a first ballot, Trump wouldn't have enough delegates. It then becomes anybody's game. And here's the problem with that scenario. And there's a couple problems, but let me just go to the main one, which is if Donald Trump walks into Cleveland in July with 1,100 delegates, 1,050 delegates, roughly about 100, 150 or so short, you're really going to take the nomination away from him? And I get it. He didn't technically secure it. But boy, oh boy, talk about hot in Cleveland, Perry. I mean, even Trump even said there'd be riots. And, quite frankly, I think he's right. I think there would be. And it would be nasty. So, the Republican Party can go down that road if they want. But I think this Trump train will get to at least 1,000, 1,100. And so at that point, he might not have the 1237, but either way, it's going to be tough to take that nomination away from him.
Well, I agree with that, but that's not stopping the establishment from all the things that are going on. Just moments ago, Drudge reported that Boehner is endorsing Paul Ryan. I mean, there's something cooking behind the scenes. What do you think it is?
There is a lot of stuff cooking on the grill, if you will. Hey, it rhymes. Hey, I'm loopy. I don't know. Look, yeah, I mean, Ryan being endorsed by John Boehner is just kind of out there. But this Thursday in Washington, Eric Erickson, who's with Red State, and a few other big conservatives are going to get together and try to find this true rock-ribbed conservative that can run as a third-party candidate. At least that's what their discussions are, to somehow stop Trump. Good luck with that. The problem is that this is exactly the type of stuff, especially as it relates to Boehner endorsing Paul Ryan, that got us here in the first place. I mean, this is the rise of Donald Trump is an indictment of the Republican establishment. The rise of Donald Trump starts with Republican establishment folks looking at themselves in the mirror and going, what in the world did we do? And what they did, or what they did not do, is in essence really listen to the voters here in America. So along comes Donald Trump, and boy, I tell you what, he's brought in some new voters for sure this election season. And he's not just bringing in dissatisfied Republicans, he's bringing in some Democrats, he's bringing in independents. So this isn't just an indictment of the Republican Party. I believe, Perry, it's an indictment of the political process that has been going on for decades in this country, and voters are fed up, and so they'll even take Trump, warts and all, and believe me, boy, does he have a few warts for sure, but they'll even take him because they're sick and tired of the same old, and they're willing to give him a shot. It's fascinating to watch.
Isn't the story behind the story, David, the turnout? I mean, you got a very low Democratic turnout, very high Republican turnout, and a lot of people in these open primaries crossing the fence, so to speak, and voting for Trump. Isn't that kind of the big story?
It is. 17% of the Republican electorate actually voting this time around, compared to basically the last time they had numbers like this were 1980. It was 1980, which is ding, 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 Ronald Reagan, Jimmy Carter. So, yeah, I mean, that's the story. And what's interesting is that a lot of people have made a big deal about Donald Trump winning open primaries where Democrats can vote and not just Republicans, and independents can vote. Well, guess what? And by the way, a lot of Trump's critics had said that, well, he'll do well in open primaries, but when it's a closed primary, he has a harder time. Perry, Florida was a closed primary. Florida was a dead closed primary, and Trump won that by 20 points going away. So it's a fascination that I've never quite seen before in my political lifetime.
All right. Now, there's something else that's going on here, and I don't know if there's much substance to it, but you're the guy that's on the know. People who meet with Donald Trump say there's somebody different than the guy that we're seeing now. And I'm wondering, whatever that difference is that what wooed a Huckabee and a Carson endorsement?
100%, yes. And I've seen that other side to Donald Trump. Obviously, we need to do our job and cultivate our sources and get to know some of these candidates in front of the camera and behind the camera. And just like I know Ted Cruz a little bit and then Ben Carson, I know Donald Trump behind the scenes, and he's a different person. And what I mean by that is that in front of the cameras, he's got a hefty ego. Newsflash, Perry, and you get around 20,000 people in a stadium, and you get a little raucous, and he lets the best of that get to him. But behind the scenes, what Jerry Falwell Jr. and Ben Carson and Sarah Palin and a few others, I can go down the list, have seen is a softer side to Donald Trump, a humanitarian side, a guy that will actually serve you and doesn't have butlers around him all the time. He's a guy that will get up and say, what can I get you? How can I help you? How can I feed you? How can I serve you? It's very, very different. It is the art of the deal. I mean, he knows how. Look, he's not successful and worth whatever it is, 3, 4 billion, 10 billion. He'd like to tell you 10 billion. But there's a reason he's worth a lot of money and he's done well, is because he knows how to play, if not the game, he definitely knows how to schmooze folks. And I think it's an authentic schmooze, Perry. I really do. I mean, I think there is that side to him. Look at his family. I mean, his family, and they're not just saying this for the cameras. I can tell you from personal experience, but also Jerry Falwell Jr. I mean, his family really, really loves him, adores him, because he has a servant's heart to people that he knows and loves. When you get to the public arena, it becomes a little different. And I think people are taking a chance on him based on some of what they know behind the scenes. All
right, one more question before I take a quick break here. It seems that Ted Cruz has been frozen out of the media. I mean, he is just not getting the press. Even though he's in second place, it's like he's not even out there. Why do you think that is?
I think so. It's a good point. I would also say that, Ted Cruz has actually been really good with the media as it relates to media access. So he's given them a lot of access, but Donald Trump has sucked up all the oxygen in the room. And I mean, Marco Rubio has a few stories to tell about that, and maybe we'll talk about him in a little bit. But look, Donald Trump is just a force of nature, and it's hurt Ted Cruz for sure. And then there's the whole evangelical issues with Ted Cruz, and we can get into that too. But who knows where you want to take the conversation? I'll go anywhere you want. Anytime, anywhere.
I'm going to let you take a bite on your hamburger, and I'll come back, and I want to get into the evangelical part of it. We'll be right back with our good friend David Brody from the Brody File that you see right here on the Dove TV network. He's also the chief political correspondent for CBN News. We'll be right back.
I'm Paulina Leiser, producer of Focus Today. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure to check our other videos at theDove.us.
Okay, welcome back, and what a delight to have with us today again our good friend David Brody. He hosts the Brody File, which you see right here on the Dove Television Network, and we are honored to carry that show and have a great working relationship with CBN News. He is the chief political correspondent for CBN News, and what an opportunity and an honor to have him the day after the second Super Tuesday. So, David, this whole evangelical thing as it relates to Donald Trump, some are for him, some are very viciously against him. Can he win the faith community, the politically right faith community over to him? Do you think he can do it?
Well, he's never going to win all of them, obviously. As you know, evangelicals are not a monolithic group. And Ted Cruz, look, let's break down the numbers for a moment. I mean, let's start with this. If it weren't for evangelical Christians in this country, Donald Trump would not be where he is today, and he would not win the nomination. I don't think there's any question about that. He has done well with evangelical voters. Now, the question now we're starting to get into, well, what is an evangelical exactly? We know what an evangelical is as it relates to believing in the inerrant word of God and all of that, and giving their lives to Christ, having that born again moment. But a lot of folks are self-described evangelicals. And can you see the quotes? Yes, you saw the quotes. I'm putting that in quotes because I think what we're starting to find out is you might say you're an evangelical, but are you really? And then we're getting to the whole thing about judging. Well, wait, are you a Christian? Are you not a Christian? Oh, you're voting for Trump? Oh, you're one of those Christians? I mean, it's complicated. It really is. And so, in answer to your question, let's look at some numbers for a second. Let's take Missouri, for example. Okay, Missouri voted on Tuesday. Very close race. Looks like Trump's going to win it, but it's very, very close. If you look at the numbers of people that attended church more than once a week, Ted Cruz wins by about 18 points or so, roughly, which is good for Cruz. The thing is that Donald Trump has still 31% of that vote. So, in other words, you've got Ted Cruz at 57% of more than weekly churchgoers, and Donald Trump at 31%. Think about that for a moment. Donald Trump is winning 31% of folks that go to church more than once a week. That's a problem for Ted Cruz. He needs to do better. His number needs to be higher. Donald Trump's number needs to be lower, but Trump's number isn't lower. Here's the other thing. If you look at folks that go to church a few times a year, kind of like the Easter and Christmas Christians, as sometimes they're known as, Donald Trump cleans everybody up on that one. 48% for Donald Trump for those voters, 22% for Ted Cruz. And so, Donald Trump is doing well with what I guess would be considered those cultural Christians, if you will, but he's also not doing that bad with churchgoers that go more than once a week. And so Donald Trump is kind of he really is making a mark here, Perry.
Yeah, he really is. It's an interesting thing to watch, to say the least. I heard a friend of mine the other day said it much. He said, I really don't like him, but I like what he's doing. Do you think that kind of sums up his candidacy?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's a guy that's going to turn over a few tables. And I think there's a feeling in the electorate that some tables need to be overturned. We've talked about a little bit about this before, but, Donald Trump plays to the sick and tired evangelical voter, and there are plenty of them this time around. Folks that are saying, you know what? Goodness gracious, I've been out there for the Republicans, and they burn me. They burn me every single time. So you know what? Maybe I'll try this guy. I mean, I'm curious. Let's give this guy a chance. Yeah, he's not going to be pastor in chief. We get that. He's not going to be maybe the most moral guy that I've ever voted for in my life. I get that. But they seem to be willing to give him a shot. It's kind of like, here's an analogy for it. It's like a plumber. So your toilet is broken. How's this for an analogy? Your toilet is broken, and that toilet's the federal government, right? And you call in a plumber year after year after year. Well, those plumbers are politicians. And you keep calling the plumber, and they can't fix the toilet, the federal government. Finally, you say, you know what? There's a guy named Donald down the street. He's never been a plumber, a politician. But we know he fixes things. We know he's been pretty successful with some other stuff. So we'll bring him in to fix the toilet. We'll give it a shot. I think that's part of what's going on here.
Only you could come up with that.
Let's invoke the word toilet 3 times in the last 30 seconds.
You're still on the air. Don't worry about it. All right. Well, the whole thing is just absolutely fascinating. He's got some big states ahead of him. He's probably going to take them. I would assume none of these other candidates have a chance in California and some other big states. All right, back to Rubio. You wanted to comment on Rubio. He's out. I mean, he's out. He finishes his term in the Senate. He's out. So what happens now?
Well, I'd say, let's start with this. I mean, I think he has a bright political future ahead. I don't think he's young, and he'll be back, whether it be 4 years or 8 years from now. He'll be back. I don't think there's a question about it. But he needs to come back retooled and more authentic. And what do I mean by that? I mean, look, the guy had a bright, optimistic vision for America. Then Donald Trump happened, and he decided to get in the gutter with Donald Trump. And two things happened. One, it wasn't authentically Marco Rubio. You know, he literally wasn't who he was at the beginning of the campaign. And so what happened was that voters started seeing, hey, wait a minute, this isn't you. And even Rubio admitted, no, this really isn't me. Look, in politics, Perry, you can't do that. I mean, you've got to be who you are. I mean, Donald Trump, for all the warts and all the stuff that he says out there, it is who he is. I mean, that is kind of him. Marco Rubio tried to be someone he wasn't. And so what happened was he started looking a bit political. He also had a toe in the water with the evangelicals. He had a toe in the water with the Tea Party. He had a toe in the water with the establishment. He was trying to kind of be all things to all people. He was trying to play the game a little bit too hard. And I think if he comes back as an authentic Marco Rubio and just says, you know what, here I am, then I think it's better for him. Also, I think the campaign, quite frankly, relied too much on Marco's political skill. They thought he could just kind of talk his way through it, not in a negative way, but just like he's got such raw political talent, which he does. But it wasn't enough. Not in the Donald Trump year, it wasn't.
Well, I know that Frank Lutz was consulting him, and he's that guy that measures every word that's said and the tone in which it's said. So, and I've met Frank on many occasions when I was chairman of the Oregon Republican Party. And he does track these audiences pretty well. But I thought, you know, he probably was the guy telling Rubio to go after Trump, which was the worst advice he could give.
Well, that's right. And also, let's remember, Rubio got labeled with the GOP establishment label. I mean, you know, and in this election, to get saddled with that baggage, it's baggage. Jeb Bush got it, and Marco Rubio then got it, and Kasich's going to have a hard time. He's only won one state, and he'll have a hard time because he's got that label. And that's why I think it's going to come down to Cruz and Trump. And, you know, it's going to be very hard for Ted Cruz, though, because he wants that one-on-one matchup so badly with Trump. The problem is, if and when he ever gets it, and there's no guarantee that he'll even get it because Kasich will be around, but even if he did get it, it's probably just too late at this point. He needed it about a month ago. And, you know, you can go to the Brody File blog. We have an interview up with Ted Cruz we just did about a week or so ago in Miami, where I asked him about, did you make a mistake by not going after not going after Donald Trump earlier? You know, and his response to that was basically like, look, I had to build a campaign infrastructure. I had to get my house in order before I could go after Donald Trump. Good answer, good political answer. The problem is, I think a lot of people let Donald Trump go unscathed for much longer than they needed to. They never thought he'd be a threat. You remember we talked about how he first came down that gold escalator, and he was, you know, everybody, the polls were in his favor in that summer, and it was the summer of Trump. Remember the summer of Trump, but then the summer of Trump will fade. Well, newsflash, the next summer of Trump will probably be him accepting the Republican nomination on stage in Cleveland. Oi gewalt.
Very well said. Well, let me ask you this before I change the subject. Trump and Hillary, can he beat her?
And I've made the contention all along, Perry, that Donald Trump, I believe, is a much better general election candidate than he is a Republican primary candidate. And I think the reasons are pretty simple. He has a wide spectrum, a wide lane to play in. That's why he's been doing so well in the Republican primaries, because many of these have been open primaries, and so he's getting independents, he's getting some Democrats, he's got the name recognition, he has the narrative, that's a pretty positive narrative that he's a successful guy, and so he's been able to kind of parlay all of that into a very, very nice run to the Republican nomination. Now, as it relates to the general election, I think he can do very well. Because, like I said, he plays in those wider lanes. And look, one thing about Republicans, as much as they might not like Donald Trump at times, he's going to go hard after Hillary. He's already bringing up some of the womanizing stuff with Bill Clinton, and he'll bring up a lot of dirt, if you will, on Hillary. And there are a lot of Republicans that want him to go hard after Hillary and play hardball with her. They're not sure that Ted Cruz and John Kasich and others will really do that, but we know Donald Trump will. And I think, look, she's going to be able to wrap policy circles around him or run policy circles around him. I mean, she's got that part of it. But I'm not convinced necessarily this is about a policy, believe it or not, now in this election. I think it's more about, emotional connection with someone that is going to just come to Washington and turn over a few tables.
All right, switching gears just for a few moments here, David. Looks like the president's going to nominate Merrick Garland, Supreme Court nominee, to replace the late Justice Scalia. Apparently, he is the chief judge of the appeals court there in D.C. You know anything about him?
Not much. I mean, he obviously is in the appeals court here in D.C., so it's one of the higher, more visible courts. I will say this, that it does seem like it is more of a moderate pick. Everybody has their own version of what a moderate pick is. The problem is Republicans aren't going to go for it. So it really doesn't matter. Now, here's the thing. Republicans have a calculation to be made here. Do they try and go down this road of maybe selecting or being okay with this moderate pick, or roll the dice and hope Hillary Clinton doesn't get elected? Because if Hillary gets elected, watch out, you're going to get someone far more to the left than Garland. So I think that's the calculation here. But no, this is a non-starter. It won't matter anyhow. And I can even tell you Freedom Works, which is a conservative kind of Tea Party organization here in Washington, just came out with a statement. They didn't say anything about Garland at all. What they talked about was the process, that President Obama shouldn't even be doing this. So it seems like they're not going to debate Garland on the merits of his nomination, but rather the process.
Well, Mitch McConnell wants to remain, head of the Senate. So if he allows this thing to go forward, I think he'd be toast.
Yeah, he'd be toast.
Yeah. Well, all this is very interesting. We keep going on, but from what it looks like, Donald's going to be the guy.
It looks that way. I mean, I've said from the very beginning, the day he rode down that gold-plated escalator, how could we forget it? I said, Perry, the only person that can stop Donald Trump is Donald Trump. And you know what? He's been doing a pretty good job of it, but he's Teflon. I mean, he literally is Teflon, and here's why. Because, where do I even begin with this, Perry? Look, $16 million of advertising was spent in Florida against this guy, against Trump. He spent $2 million in defense of himself, $2 million pro-Trump, $16 million anti-Trump, and he won in Florida by 20 points. Now, you have to scratch your head and go, what in the world is going on? Here's what's going on. None of that matters. The negative advertising on Donald Trump doesn't matter. And here's why. Because everybody knows all of the negative stuff on Donald Trump. As a matter of fact, Donald Trump brings it up himself. Did you see what he said last night in his press conference there on Tuesday night? He actually said 90% of that stuff that they're saying is false. He goes, but maybe 10% of it, maybe that's true. I mean, he doesn't care. He'll bring up the dirt on himself. They're willing to let Donald Trump have a pass on some of this because he's an outsider, and they're willing to give him a shot. Who knows? I don't know. I need medication. I need
Okay, I'll send you some in the mail, buddy.
Did you FedEx it?
You need some Oregon salmon or something.
That's what I need.
Okay, buddy. Hey, appreciate you much. We pray for your protection, and don't overdo it. Let's stay in touch through the cycle, okay?
Sounds good, Perry. All the best to you guys.
David Brody, he's the host of the Brody File right here on the Dove Television Network, and he's also the chief political correspondent for CBN News. We value our relationship with him greatly. We'll be right back.